All right, hello.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Totally Tangential. As per usual, before we hop in whatever spicy topic we have for the week, we got our weekly just catch up and updates. So, Jonathan, anything going on with you that's notable, interesting, sexy in the past week?
Well, I got something sexy for you.
Oh, I'm not sure if I should be happy about that, but go ahead.
I don't think the viewers will be either.
Oh.
Point being, I think it was 2 days ago, yeah. I went with one of my coworkers and his girlfriend to a place in Riverside called the Game Lab or whatever. It has a ton of like retro games. Basically just an arcade, but particularly focused on the retro edge of it because they were having a Smash tournament.
Smash Melee, Smash Ultimate?
It looked like Ultimate, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, it had to have been Ultimate now that I think about it because the character selection screen.
Gotcha.
But point being, we actually didn't watch any of it because it was not as central as we thought it would be. Like, when me and my friends went to a DDR tournament in Irvine, they walled off like an entire section of it specifically dedicated to the DDR tournament, and everyone was watching like people go one against the other.
Mm-hmm.
But since this was a 96-man dual elimination tournament, they couldn't realistically do that for time purposes, and there was no like separate rooms in this location.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to like awkwardly stand near the bar or in the machines like with everyone else, and like choose to watch the big screen, or you hover behind any of the 4 little screen matches going on. Yeah, I'm sure it would be fun to participate, but watching it just didn't feel right. So instead, we just played a ton of games and had a lot of fun.
Okay, fair enough. It doesn't sound particularly sexy, but...
No. Here's the sexy part.
Okay.
So I played air hockey against them, and I don't think I've ever played air hockey against you, but I am notorious for being literally the best air hockey player I know. I have not lost a single match in... I genuinely do not know the last time I lost a single match.
Okay.
But... point being, my coworker's girlfriend actually beat me, and I think it was like 7-5 too. So it wasn't even like, a 1-point game. She actually like found a hole in my game that I recognized at the end. But point being, like, she found the hole and she beat me, and that was the best game of air hockey I have played in maybe my entire life. That was so much fun.
I am glad to hear that you had that. I do find it interesting with certain things because with like traditional sports and esports as well, you generally know what it's like to take it to the peak. But with some people that I've been listening to for a different podcast while I'm at work, they've been really into Foursquare. If you remember the game from elementary school, and they've been doing
very vaguely do.
Yeah, exactly, and they've been doing that pretty competitively and just saying about all of the skills that comes up, and it just makes it interesting of like games that even if they have like some kind of competitive scene. That don't have huge competitive scenes, like, it's interesting to see what the hypothetical skill ceilings are, because you may definitely be above average at air hockey, but if there was, like, an air hockey league, just like, if you've seen professional ping pong players who, like, go just batshit crazy with that stuff, I think it would be amazing to see, like, 2 professional, dedicated air hockey players go against each other.
I would love to see that. And honestly, if I ever knew where like a recreational air hockey league was, I would at least like, or maybe just a one-off tournament, I would certainly join if it was like $10 or something. Like, that would be so much fun.
Yeah, and I mean, definitely, air hockey is something that's fun, but if you don't have, like, any specific goal in it, it's like a one-off thing that you can do. But if you actually have something that's a consistent competitive scene around you, I could see you getting pretty into that. It's your new DDR.
Yeah, honestly, though. But, yeah, I lost that first game, and like I said, I recognized the hole in my game that she exploited. Like, I had a little bit of a habit or tell that she was, like, able to identify, and I'm not sure if she consciously did it. I think she did. But the thing is, since I recognized it, I played a second game against her later on, and I basically crushed her. Like, the final score would have been 6-4, but there were 30 seconds left, and I was really determined to beat her. Like, beat her.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, we skewed the score at the end to be 7-6 with me winning just because we were, like, fucking going ham at the end.
Okay.
But point being, like, I recognized what the hole was, and I quickly adapted, and yeah, she was struggling a lot more the second time around. So I'm like, haha, this was still a good game. The first one was one for ages, but the second one just taught me, okay, I was able to adapt, improvise, and overcome.
Yeah, you leveled up for the second game, but considering that it was 7-6, or even if it was going to be 7-5 or whatever, I mean, that's still a pretty good game, presumably.
Yeah, it was. Honestly, like, if I ever play air hockey with anyone, I would want to be with her again, because that was like, that's the most I've ever had to focus and like actually like sweat during an air hockey match. Like that was genuinely so much fun.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that you had your amazing, sexy air hockey time.
Yeah. What have you been up to though?
Well, I think I've told you before, even on the podcast, that I'll get like free Digimon cards from work, the box toppers that we're not allowed to sell and all that stuff. And I had enough racked up that I was just like, hey, I'm not really using these, and even if I was, like, you need at max 4 copies in a deck, because that's the maximum that you can have, and some of these cards I have, like, 10, 15 copies of, so I decided to sell them online, but I was too lazy to, like, get envelopes and sell them individually and all that stuff, so I decided to, like, bulk sell them to a card shop that had a buy list, which, you know, you get, like, reduced prices on it, but they're still good enough, and you get to sell them all at once, which is the nice part. I don't have to worry about, like, okay, this one sold, okay, another copy sold, and so on over a long period of time. So I went for that, but Digimon, even if it's a big card game, it's not as big as, like, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic, or Pokemon, so the buy lists are harder to come by. So the one that I sent them to was a card shop that's based in Canada. It's like a big thing, and they have like 6 or 7 locations, but it's all in Canada. And the total amount of cards that I sent was something like 35 or 40 cards. When I went into the UPS and ship it, it weighed like a pound exactly. Guess how much it costs to ship for the cheapest option available to Canada?
For 1 pound to Canada? 15?
You know, try and multiply that by 11. It was $165. And I just thought that was fucking ridiculous. Like, there's no goddamn way that actually takes $165 worth of just resources for them. I mean, I was just, look, I got all of these cards for free. I'm not worried about maximizing profit or anything. So I was just like, sure, just get this over with. And I still, you know, I got like $500 for the stuff. So I, you know, plus $350 off of it or whatever, but it was still just like, what the fuck? This should not be $160 to send a, you know, deck box of 40 like weightless cards to Canada, which isn't even that far away from Boston. Is the thing. It's not like I'm sending it to the other side of the world.
Yeah, that's fucking absurd. I was only thinking like 15 because like I go on eBay and I'm like I've never really seen shipping more than 30 anywhere, but I've never really shipped heavy things. But then again, a 1 pound box, that's not heavy, so I genuinely do not know why it's so expensive. It wasn't even a large box, no?
Yeah, it wasn't, and like the thing is before I had done the stuff, I had gone online and checked like UPS and USPS and all of those things, and they have those calculators, but the calculators aren't always one-to-one. I'm not sure if it's that like different UPS places have certain options unavailable, or if it's just that the calculators aren't always accurate or what, but it said that I should have been able to do it for like 30 or 40 bucks, which I thought was, you know, decent enough. But when I went in there and it was 160 bucks, it's like, shit, you know, the next closest place to me, and especially since I don't have a car, is like a 30-minute walk away, and, you know, with the time that they close and me getting off of work and this and that, and like I said, since the cards were free, I was just like, fuck it, I'll do this, but this is kind of bullshit that it's $160 for 1 pound of cards.
Yeah, that is honestly absurd, but at least for what it's worth, you said you got like $350 out of it?
$350 profit.
Yeah, that's probably like 3 days of work for you right there. So,
yeah, it is.
Oh, that's a really good pull.
Yeah, for sure. But next time, I'll try selling some cards individually and see how that compares with the process, especially because, like, even if I lose the cards in the mail, I think if I just do, like, an envelope and a stamp, and I get the cards for free, so even if I have to refund someone if cards get lost in the mail, that's gotta be, like, what, 50 cents or $1 per thing, and if I'm shipping out, you know, $15, $20 cards, like, that's just gotta work better overall.
Yeah, wait, so are these cards, like, are they opened or are they unopened, to be clear?
They're Well, some are open, some are unopened from the standpoint of they're box toppers. So if you open a box of any trading card, a lot of times they'll have a bonus of like, oh, assuming that you bought an entire box instead of a single pack, it'll have like a special art version or a special pack that has like one card in it or two cards in it. So the ones that have like an alternate art tend to be clear see-through plastic, so those ones you don't need to open up to know what they are. But some of them are like, oh, you get this special pack that has like one card in it, but it can be like one of 12 different cards. Those ones you have to open up, otherwise you have no clue what's in the pack. It could be a $3 card, it could be a $30 card.
Gotcha, but does opening it up reduce the value or no? Is it like still fair game?
I mean, it might make a difference for some people, but generally, like, if you want to put that thing in your deck or even in a binder, you're going to need to open it up. So, like, some people might be hesitant, but as long as the card comes in, like, near mint condition, where there's not really any noticeable nicks or anything beyond, like, what you would typically have when you open a fresh pack, people don't tend to care.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, you'll have to give that a try and see if the profit is even larger, but at least in the meantime, 350 is a fucking good pull.
Yeah, it is. I am happy about that, but I'll be even happier if I think it's next month or maybe October, where I think Biden is supposed to like at least confirm whether or not they're going to do like the 10K student loan reduction. And if that goes through, man, I'd be so happy because I think I have 14K in student loans, which isn't terrible, but taking that down by 10K where I only have 4K of student loans would just be a dream.
Oh yeah, for sure, because then, I mean, I don't know if this was the plan, but even if you just drop that 350 on the 4K loan, good God, that'd be a pretty high percentage, actually.
Yeah, that's like almost 10% of it right there. Where
Yeah,
right now,
it really is.
Yeah, so I don't know, fingers crossed, and if that does end up happening, I'm sure we'll talk about it whenever that does or doesn't happen.
You'll be jumping for joy.
Yeah, but I don't know, anything else notable for you? I'm trying to think of myself here, but if not, we can probably jump into a topic.
I mean, nothing too major. I just have one, like, small thing that's kind of funny and notable, I guess.
Okay, then hit me with it.
One of my favorite YouTube channels, like, discusses, like, psychology and research in the context of video games.
Mm-hmm.
But he just released his first one in context of anime. And oh my goodness, it's opening a whole different world for me. And oh my God, it also made me realize that as behind as I am in playing games, how behind I am in anime dwarfs that.
Well, that's not surprising whatsoever. But also, like, how does the psychology in it go? I'm curious. Is it something where he, like, analyzes the characters in games in anime? Or is he just like, if you watch this anime, then you're probably a Leo. If you watch this one, you're a Capricorn.
Thankfully, it tends to be neither, to be honest. It tends to be more like, this is a feeling or sensation, something a person might experience while consuming this media, and then he delves into the psychological reason why.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I'm just like, honestly, opening up an entirely different medium for this kind of thing, I'm down. I'll probably get a lot of things spoiled for me, but I also probably didn't intend on watching even a quarter of them, so I'm down.
Oh, you should type his name in the Discord chat. That way, if I am looking for something to watch later, I can probably at least check out one of those videos.
Yeah, if I was to recommend any of my favorite YouTubers, to be honest, he would probably be pretty high up there.
All right. Good to hear. But with that aside, I will jump into the topic, which I will note, even though I was completely aware of, like, okay, you know, it's Sunday, I got to get ready for the podcast and all that stuff, I, for some reason, just completely forgot, oh shit, it's my turn to pick a topic. So I was like, well, I know that I have, like, enough written down that I can probably think of something, but I thought of something that we'll see how long this lasts, but I feel like it should last, you know, a podcast worth.
Can you or I ever put any effort into this?
Clearly not. I mean, hey, considering the fact that you told me that the podcasts have my voice double up at the beginning of, like, the past 5 of them, you know, I'm not even editing and listening to that, so the effort in this is clearly minimal at the moment.
For what it's worth, the one episode that had by far the most effort put into it has the least views last time I checked, so...
Is that your game show one?
Yeah, last I checked it had the least. I would have to double check.
Okay. Yeah, I do think it's funny. A lot of them are averaging like 8 views, but I can see the unique viewers on it, and they're averaging
Right.
4 unique viewers, and I'm pretty sure it's literally just me, you, my brother, my mom. So, Sag.
Yeah, we don't talk about that.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, you know what? That one actually isn't the least viewed anymore.
Yeah, it's The End. The End is the least viewed.
Which is also mine.
It is. So clearly, clearly we're at a trend here that you were just, no one loves you.
Yeah. Oh well.
All right, but getting into the topic, which I totally thought of, days beforehand.
Totally tangentially thought about it.
Exactly, whatever that means. Is you have a bucket list for like video games or specifically for movies. I know since like the beginning of COVID, you've been getting all of your bucket list movies in of like, oh, this was a huge movie, everybody's talked about it or at least know about it, and I've never watched it. But when it comes to actual bucket list things, that also put in the caveat of like, it doesn't have to be a real bucket list thing. It could just be like, this is something that I would like to do or think would be cool to do before I die, even if I'm not actually willing to put in the effort for it. What are some of the things that you have? Because I can think of like so many different things for myself, whether it be going places, doing things, like achieving goals, and I'm just curious what some of yours are, and for the ones that like don't seem that out of this world, I'm curious for both you and for myself why we haven't actually pursued doing these.
This is actually a really the question is good, to be clear. It's just my answer to it is very like it's an entire topic of its own. So I don't know. I'm gonna get like tangential right off the bat. So if you want to stay on topic, you should probably go first.
Hey man, I am fine with that. I mean, the podcast has its name for a reason, so jump in.
All right. So it's actually like a problem because my bucket list for various things are very full until it comes to my real life ones. Like about like actual accomplishments, goals, or things I'd like to do, like that aren't related to like video games, movies, shows, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think the like quickest, like shortest explanation probably is just if I want to say I want to watch, I don't know, let me think, the Green Mile or whatever. I know that's a classic that I haven't seen yet. Like the investment it takes for me to actually watch that is going to be, I don't know how long the movie is, maybe 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
So like just right there, boom, bucket list item done. But that is like honestly kind of stretching the idea of a bucket list because the bucket list is supposed to be a lot more significant than that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I do jokingly call those bucket lists because like yeah, I do want to experience things that kind of thing before I die. Like I would love to play, I don't know, the Mass Effect series I've heard is pretty good. I'd like to try that at some point before I die. Mm-hmm. But like it's actually so low investment that I don't actually really consider it a thing. But if it comes to actual bucket list, like real life things, gonna be honest, that list is almost empty. I do not know what I want to do with life, right?
I mean, that's fair enough, but that's why I even added the caveat that I did, because you brought up the exact point that I was thinking of that you might bring up, which is like...
Am I that predictable?
Kind of. But also because I was thinking it. That with a bucket list, you tend to think of it, of this like grand thing of, oh, I want to, hike Machu Picchu, I want to, travel the Great Wall of China or something. But if you go down just to like what the definition of a bucket list is, it's something that you want to do before you kick the bucket, which if that's just watch a movie, then I mean, by all means, that's technically a bucket list, even if that's something that most people wouldn't consider bucket list worthy. So if that's like the majority of your things, that's fine. But also to like expand, because I'm not sure if your mind had gone to here or if these are also just empty things. Because for me personally, when I think of bucket list things, there are certain like, do this successful thing or go to this place, but also some things of just like, man, I've always thought it would be super cool to like do a one-armed push-up or to run a 5K, since my cardio's always been shit. And those are also things that like aren't huge investments. I mean, they take effort. They're not as little as a movie, but they're also not as grand things of like, seeing the pyramids or some shit like that. But those are things that I consider bucket list items for me. So do you have anything like those, or is it really just media-based stuff?
I'm gonna be honest. I genuinely could not think of something I want to have another funnel cake before I die. I know that sounds like I'm memeing, but like I've been wanting funnel cake for like a decade and I haven't had one.
That's such
Like,
a weird. Tell me about that. When was the last time you had funnel cake, and what made its impact so great that you're like, man, before I die, I need at least one more of these.
well, so the last time I would have had a funnel cake probably would have been. I think I might have had one at Magic Mountain, and the last time I went to Magic Mountain would have been late elementary, early middle school. And I remember that funnel cake being the best dessert I've ever had in my life. One of the best foods I've ever had in my life.
That's surprising because you're not a sweet guy normally.
Not normally, but the thing is, like, it just opened my eyes to the realities of the universe.
Oh my
But
god.
I mean, all jokes aside, my fear is like, what if that was just because like my food palette when I was younger was significantly smaller because my family just, quite frankly, only ate white people food growing up.
Fair enough.
So like now that it's expanded so significantly, I'm not even sure that I would like a funnel cake as much. So I'm like, I don't know if there's a easy accessible one down the street, I'd get it. But really, it's only at like fairs, carnivals, and like amusement parks, none of which I've been to in a very long time. So like I genuinely do want to try another funnel cake to see if I can hit that like pinnacle of life that I did when I was a kid, but I'm kind of afraid of it disappointing.
Yeah, that's fair. That's actually a question that I have, I guess, with the few things that that you do have that aren't media related. Because if you watch a movie that was like, oh, it's a big name and it's not exactly great, you're not watching them for them to be great. I mean, presumably that's going to be the case, but you're watching them because they're like so culturally significant that you're like, well, I've got to watch this at some point. But for things that are more personal based, like a funnel cake or anything else that you can think of. Like, do you think that might be a part of it, or to what extent of just the fear that's surrounding of it? It's like, shit, if I do all of the things on my bucket list and they're all just like kind of disappointing, or if I finish them all, like, oh, what's left then? God, I guess I better just kill myself.
Well, that's actually a funny question. Like, I mean, I know it's a very serious existential one, but it's just like I've actually been asking myself that more and more often as I, watch more and more shows, but the thing that's funny about it is the more things I do, the more things I find, which might be like common sense, but it's just like my show bucket list, being honest with you, there's like 0 shows left on it at this point. There's no show that I like desperately want to watch anymore because anything that was on my radar, I've already seen. So like you might think like, damn, Jonathan, that's kind of depressing, but it's just like, I don't know, like I watched Breaking Bad and I really liked it. Then I found Better Call Saul. Now that I'm finishing Better Call Saul, everyone on subreddits are like scrambling to find other shows. They're like, yo, Mr. Robot, yo, The Wire, yo, and then like et cetera shows. I'm like, okay, so clearly there's other things out there that even if it's not on my radar, I'd probably enjoy it. So I think even with other things, just like even if it's not on your radar, you just randomly try it and then I don't know, just by circumstance.
Yeah. No, it is interesting with that. Yeah, especially because I feel like your movie list has gotten longer and longer, even when you've hit things off of it. But yeah, your TV show list, which part of it could just be, I feel like you're going more for the things that are culturally significant in your time period. Where the movies, you've gone to movies like back to as early as the 70s or 80s, I want to say. But there's like TV shows like The Sopranos or stuff like that that's before like relevance of our age, but they are just super famous TV shows that are super culturally significant, but I guess in your mind it's just like, not really going to go back to that.
Well, the thing is, like, as I've been watching more and more of these things that are culturally significant, in general, I've found I tend not to like them as much as I was expecting, and it's either a function of 2 things in my mind. Either A, it just really like was not as good as people have hyped it up to be, or B, and probably more likely, it's the building of expectation that causes the problem. Like, I'll give you an example of it. And this is one I mentioned to you before multiple times, but Spirited Away, I liked it. I did not love it by any means, and I expected it to be one of the best movies I ever watched, and I came away disappointed despite thinking it was a good movie. Yeah, Howl's Moving Castle and Princess Mononoke, which is generally revered much more than Howl's Moving Castle.
Yeah.
But point being, I loved both of those movies going in completely blind because I had absolutely no expectation for it. And even other movies like recently Everything Everywhere All at Once, absolutely loved it. Made me sob, tore my heart apart.
Yeah, I've heard really good things about that one.
Would recommend it. But also Nope, I knew nothing about except it was by Jordan Peele. Went in, absolutely loved it. Or, it sounds like I'm listing off things, but I'm going somewhere with this. Voices of a Distant Star is made by the guy who made Your Name. And I liked that thing significantly more than Your Name because I had expectations going to Your Name, I guess, or something.
Gotcha.
I don't know.
So you go into things that you know of through other people and it being famous with expectations, which reduces how much you like it, but then you watch the creator's other content which you don't have expectations for, so you end up liking it more.
Yeah, I guess partially. It's just like my lists have run dry, and that's kind of okay because for the most part, the stuff on a lot of my lists I didn't enjoy as much as I thought I would. It's been the stuff I randomly come across that I really love.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that is fair, because a lot of the times expectations do reduce how much you like stuff. Like, very few times have things lived up to expectations. Like, for me, I think one of the only things off of the top of my head is, like, when we saw Parasite together, I was like, oh, this is getting great reviews, and then when we came out of that, I mean, our whole hour car ride back or whatever, we were just like, oh, yeah, and this one part, oh, yeah, and this, and oh, the scoring, and it's just, like, very few things that have gotten hype for it. Of just like, oh, yeah, new Spider-Man movie, really enjoyed it. Is it, like, the best movie of all time? No. Maybe you disagree being a Spider-Man fanboy, but...
Excuse me.
Yeah.
But all jokes aside, I don't know. So that's just, like... I haven't bothered to add things to the list because I almost feel like I enjoy it more in not having a list.
Yeah.
If that's kind of poetic in a way.
I guess it kind of is, but that makes sense. But something that I am curious about, though, which your movies and video games may be this way, and feel free, after I say this, to jump back to media at any point. I mean, we are totally tangential for a reason. But I am curious in the more, like, traditional sense of a bucket list. I feel like a lot of things that people put on their bucket list aren't just things that they'd like to do before they die. They're things that they might be even disappointed if they didn't do before they die. Where if you don't watch The Usual Suspects, I'm not sure if you're coming out of that being like, shit, my life, if I, could just live 2 more hours, I would spend that watching The Usual Suspects. Yeah. I don't think that's the case. So do you have anything, whether it is a game, media, or like, finishing college, or, doing this or that, or even something as generic as just like being happy for an extended period of time? Do you have something where it's like, shit, if I, died today, or if I died in a week, I would try to do this, or I'd be disappointed if I couldn't do this?
Yeah, I have 2 ways I'm going to approach this, actually.
Okay.
I'll save the existential one for second, don't worry.
All right, glad to hear it.
The one that's actually maybe almost relating back to the funnel cake, in the same spirit of it, without being about the funnel cake itself. As I'm sure you've noticed over the last several years, pretty much since I started like making the bucket lists, I've been exploring a lot of new things, and never at any point have I gone back to enjoy the things that I loved. So I guess it's kind of like, I feel like I'm always going to be endlessly pursuing something new, and that's good because that's how you like grow as a person. That's how you find new things you love, make new memories, right? But like, I don't know. What if there's something I really genuinely enjoyed as a teen, or as something in my young 20s that I just never actually go back to, and maybe just completely forget about, or just never re-experience it again? Like, I think there's probably some value in re-experiencing things.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things that I was wondering about as far as, like, bucket list stuff that came to my head other than media for you when I thought of the stuff, is, like, you used to be really into music, and you still are, but as far as, like, you bought production equipment, or you tried to be in a band, or do your Screamo stuff and all that stuff, and, I mean, once again, not as, like, oh, you have to make your whole life about this, but would you ever, like, on a bucket list thing, be like, I really wish that I could get to a point in my life, even if it's not right now feasible, of just like, I wish I could like actually write and produce my own song, even if it's just like a SoundCloud thing with 5 views or something. Do you have any aspirations like that? Because that is something that's, an older thing that you, maybe not producing was on your list, but it was an older thing you used to enjoy, and now it's something that, understandably so because of life circumstances, it doesn't seem like you go for anymore.
You just did 2 things to me here. 1, you brought up something very topical, and 2, you just opened my eyes to the realities of what a bucket list could be. Thank you, Dylan.
You are welcome.
All jokes aside, the story is I've been cleaning out the house a little bit more just because it desperately needs to be done. And what I did, this is just yesterday, so very topical. I came across my old bag of drumsticks from, when I used to do band in like middle school. And
Like the ice cream or like the chicken?
I have some ice cream drumsticks that I've kept since middle school in my freezer.
Wow, that's pretty great.
My point being, and I pulled them out and I'm like, dang, like I don't necessarily want to like donate these or like throw them away because it's like, what if I use them again someday or want to use them? But then I thought about it. I sat down. I'm like, when am I ever going to drum again? Like, under what circumstance? Like, it's not like I ever lost a passion for music per se, but just as I'm getting older and I'm realizing time is very finite and there's only so many hobbies you could pursue, I just realized never again in my life am I going to be a drummer. That just is the reality of it. So I did indeed donate the drumsticks.
Oh, okay.
But it was just kind of like sobering and surreal in a way, just realizing in that moment, like, I don't know, it's kind of like, think of it like a video game where you're like presented with a text box and you definitively realize this is a branching point in your story, right? Like, I had those drumsticks in my hand and I'm making the conscious decision, yeah, I am never going to drum again. Granted, I could just buy another pair of drumsticks. They're like less than $10, but I think you get the idea I'm going for. It's a metaphorical closing of a door.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like the episode that we talked about, finality. I think the episode's titled "The End" or whatever now, but
Yeah.
About how certain things you do realize that, oh, this is going to be the last time that this house is my house, or certain things that you don't realize of, like, oh shit, I guess that was the last time that I talked to this person. But I mean, in regards to a bucket list, like with the music thing, you said that you still value it, but just because of life having shifted and all that stuff. I mean, I'm not saying that like you have to do this tomorrow thing, but could you see yourself, in your 40s, 50s, presumably if you have enough money saved up, do you see yourself looking back and just being like, shit, I used to like have such a passion for wanting to do this. I never did. I was too focused on this. I have enough money saved up now. Hopefully I have enough free time to myself. You know what? Even if it's not good just for myself, could you see yourself going back and like, picking up the drums again and trying to post something? Or are you just like, no, I buried that and I'm leaving it buried?
I think some things do realistically have to be buried at a certain point. But as far as music goes, I would love to at least make a song, especially since I literally have all the equipment I need, like, as of this very second. But it's just, I don't know. There's so many things I would like to do. So this is why I'm saying, like, you realized, you made me realize maybe my definition could change. Because, like, I would love to become actually fluent in Spanish and, like, visit Mexico, since it's literally a couple-hour drive from where I live.
Yeah.
Or, like, I don't know. I would love to actually not seem like I would love for my art skill to make it seem like I don't have 0 arms and I'm drawing with my feet. Like, that'd be great. I would love to do, so many different kinds of things amongst that. Like, I don't know. I would love to learn more martial arts since I have enjoyed them, aside from the overly toxic competitive standpoint. But
fair enough.
I would love to go down that road. I would love to do so many things. It's just I don't think they ever landed on a bucket list because I did make the conscious decision of I think we've talked about it before in personal conversations about you want the result but you don't want the process. Like, I just don't value the end result and process enough to justify the time it would take to get there.
I think that's fair, but yeah, that is just one of the big things of why I brought it up, of just a bucket list doesn't have to be these grandeur things. It can be just like, man, I've always wanted to be able to do this. I want to learn how to do this. And even if you're not necessarily willing to put in the work. But then I am curious, like, in your mind, do you think it's because we're still in our early 20s? I mean, God, we're getting to the mid-20s, and before you know it, 85. Yeah, but yeah,
I continue.
Exactly. But with that being as it is, assuming we make it to our 50s, which, knowing us and knowing the world, that's a big if, but still, like, do you think some of these things change in your mind of, like, hey, I'm no longer focusing on college or figuring out what I want to do with my life, hopefully, because that's a big thing of, your 20s for most people, I would presume, of, yeah, there's these other things I would like to do, learn the language, run a 5K, but also it's probably, higher up on the scale of needs to just get my life fucking together. So, if we get to that point, do you think there's any chance in the future that you are like, yeah, you know what, I am going to like at least dedicate somewhat of myself to learn Spanish, or are there just too many things that are like, yeah, well, I'd love to go to space, but I'm not willing to put in the work to be an astronaut, so it's not even worth mentioning.
Oh man, I think a lot more goes than that just work. But all jokes aside, I mean, I think that would be almost natural, like as you grow up, the things that you value come from different avenues. Like, I don't know, at this point, it's largely probably A, short-term experiences, and B, just trying to set up your future, and then maybe when we're older, it'd be accomplishments or family or whatever. So, like, I wouldn't be surprised if hobbies get more emphasis, but, it might happen. It might happen. It's my definitive answer.
Okay, I mean, fair enough. It's not like it would be super understandable if you were like, oh yeah, 50 years from now, I'm absolutely starting to learn Spanish. I mean, enough things have changed in the past 5 years for us that it's hard to tell what will or won't be the case for us years and years down the line.
Yeah, and I mean, at this point, the thing that I find the most fun, kind of unfortunately, is consuming a lot of media and, like, finding significance in various, themes and things in it. But point being, a lot of it's consumption right now. I don't know if when I'm 50 it'll still be the same thing. Maybe at that point it would be producing things or just experiencing things. Who knows? Like, it can change a lot.
Oh yeah, no, it's understandable. But for me, I mean, one thing that I'm glad about, which I'm not sure if this is the same for you, but this podcast in a way for me is a bucket list thing where I'm not even worried about as much of the results of the podcast, because I don't think that's something that you can put on your bucket list as things that you don't have control of. I'm not worried about, oh, I want to have a successful podcast as part of something on my bucket list. I just want to have a podcast or something that we can like do together and have fun and create and see how it turns out. And one of the big things is I just want to dedicate myself to something like that for a period of time. So this will be episode 8 by the time that it comes out. I mean, I'm glad that we're doing it, but I think if we get to like episode 100 or something, which if we're doing it once a week, then that's still going to take like 2 years. But if it stayed at 8 views an episode, I'd still be 100% satisfied, and I'd feel like that's a bucket list item checked off for me, just because, oh, hey, I actually, did this thing that I enjoyed, and I can say I put effort into it, even if it's very minimal effort. The fact that we keep it up for 2 years would just be something that absolutely for me would be checking something off my bucket list.
Yeah, for sure. Just the fact that we would actually have the dedication and persistence to keep it up for 2 years is, it theoretically should not be taken lightly.
Yeah.
So I don't know, that's good that you're knocking something off, but I don't think I've actually had the chance to ask yet, because we've been flowing and vibing. But what's on your bucket list?
For me, I did like shotgun some things off. I definitely do. As far as like physical fitness goals, I'd love to be able to do like one-armed pull-ups, one-armed I was going to say sit-ups, but I don't think you need any arms for sit-ups.
Also, one-arm jerk-off.
Yeah, one-armed jerk-offs. No, one-armed push-ups, and then, like, being able to run a 5K. I don't care as much about a marathon, but I feel like a 5K is a perfect example of, like, this is a good physical fitness point, because I think a 5K should take, like, 30 to 40 minutes if you're running at a, like, standard pace. So, yeah. There's things like that. Something that I actually did yesterday, which is something that I want to keep up and hopefully reach this goal at some point, is I got some uncooked rice, and I went to this small little park that's behind my apartment, and there's lots of little birds, sparrows, that are around, and I threw some rice, and they all ate, and I want to be that old man in the park that has like birds sitting on your shoulder, because except rather than me being an old man, I want to be a 25-year-old or something. But I don't know. I really like birds. I've come to realize that. I think that a lot of them are really cute and just interesting and all that stuff. So I'd like to be able to have, like, as weird of a goal as that is, to just have a point where I can, like, feed the birds and they'll be comfortable enough that they recognize me and, like, come up and I could, like, have one on my hand or something.
You've ever seen that episode of Hey Arnold called Pigeon Man?
I don't.
Oh man! Well, for anyone listening to this who wouldn't know, you're gonna be Pigeon Man, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, that is disturbing to me, but all right.
Continue though.
Yeah, but there's that. And then there's other things that are more like general of like, obviously you and I had a good time hanging out with each other during the beginning of COVID, where it's like less of a goal but more of like, I would really enjoy it if you and I could live together or live close together again at some point, as weird of a goal that is. And one thing that's kind of big for me that I'd like to get to at some point is, I really enjoy collecting manga and Gundam and stuff like that, and one of my goals would be to have my own house where I can actually have like a display collection gamer room or whatever, where the walls are just lined with manga and Gundam, and like, here's the NES, here's the PS2, here's the PS3. Yeah, exactly. So that's a goal of mine that's kind of like a bucket list thing of like, hey, maybe it won't happen, maybe it will happen, but for sure I feel like if I'm on my deathbed and I'm looking back, that would be one of those things that I could look at and be like, man, I'm glad that I got this done.
Yeah, honestly, that's fair. And actually, I kind of relate to that a little bit in that not really a bucket list item, but something I'd like to have, because I've never had this. At least you had a little bit of it. Is like a decorated room. Because you've seen my room at UCI. That thing was like,
it was a very vanilla room. Yes.
I think the only decoration I had was my bamboo plant.
I don't even remember your bamboo plant, to be honest.
Yeah, it was in the window by the curtains. You probably wouldn't have seen it. Okay. But point being, it was just like, I completely understand wanting to like kind of display your identity via your surroundings, because it also just makes it feel more like comfortable and more like home. Kind of gets you in a good mindset. It's like, nothing wrong with that. That'd be a good goal.
Yeah, but I am curious, unless you have any more input on that stuff, of with you said you have a hard time thinking of anything that are beyond like the media. Do you have any that, whether it be only one thing, or is it really just from what you can think of, just media related stuff?
Well, I guess this was one of the totally tangent parts earlier that I kind of forgot to get back to, so haha, you're keeping us on track and everything. I don't have any issues admitting this on a podcast because of how vocal I am about this stuff. But growing up, as you know, I had a lot of like mental health stuff, and because of that, it prevented me from like having a long-term future plan. So like, even if that stuff is better now, I never really got out of the mindset of just never making plans for the future.
Yeah, we've talked enough times where I'm like, hey Jonathan, what do you think after this? And you're like, man, that's 1 year from now. I don't know, I'll get to that when I get to that.
Well, it's just like, even if I sit down and think on it, I never come to any conclusions. So it's not like I'm like purposely avoiding it out of like some kind of fear. It's just like, I genuinely like, it's like writer's block in a way. It's like the only comparison I can think of, where like you sit down at the computer and you try to write, and after like 8 hours you get 2 sentences done, and you're like, wow, what a waste of a day. It's kind of like that exact same thing. So it's just kind of like, I guess that's almost kind of like what I said earlier, where it's like, maybe having that plan and knowledge doesn't actually help me. It's just the best moments in my life, like overwhelmingly so, like have always been spontaneous things, whether it's spontaneous things I've watched or kind of just getting away from media. Just every single one of my favorite hangouts I've ever had in my life, or favorite days, have always been spontaneous, on the spot. Like, I don't think I've ever scheduled a hangout more than 1 week in advance and been like, man, that is something I want to remember. Like, yeah. I don't know, my life has never ever been like that, so it's always been very amazingly and cripplingly difficult for me to make plans for the future.
Well, I'm also curious, as far as with bucket list things tend to be more just like, hedonistic isn't the right word, but it's the word that I'll use right now because I'm too lazy to think. Things. Is there anything just in your day-to-day life that you even value like that? Because when I think of just the certain things that come up for me, whether it be the fitness goals or this or that, those are things that whether I get to them or not, they're things in my day-to-day life that I think about. With you not really thinking about the future too much and just knowing how your day-to-day goes of just like hanging out with friends and enjoying life, I feel like half of the reason why you don't have a bucket list for this stuff is just, do you even value anything that could be on a bucket list?
That's actually a very good question. Yeah, you see, I'm actually looking up the definition of hedonism, not because I don't know what it is, but because I want to like understand like the core idea of it, because I feel like I've only heard hedonism, and I'm not trying to criticize your like usage of the word. Like, I'm actually thinking like this is a very good way to take it. Because, like, I've only ever heard it used with a negative connotation. Even, like, on Google Images, the picture of 3 pig-human hybrids eating a disgusting portion of food.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you look up hedonism on Wikipedia, it doesn't necessarily sound like the denotation has to be negative.
Yeah, it's just like indulging your desires, right?
Yeah, trying to maximize pleasure and minimize pain or suffering or whatever, which I feel like should be what everyone should be pursuing, at least for their own personal life. Maybe not for the greater good, but you get what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
As far as, like, getting directly to your question, like, about day-to-day things, I feel like there's a few little bits that we can find in there. Like, I love learning legitimately, which is part of what has probably kept me in school to an extent. But we've even talked about how with, like, my YouTube consumption, I've had a problem where all my YouTube's recommendations are all something that involves me learning, and sometimes I just want to zone out to something stupid, but nothing on my homepage is, like, just blind entertainment. Like, I think genuinely I do enjoy learning and improving. That is one thing. I don't know how to make that into a bucket list thing, but maybe if on a day-to-day basis I'm always still learning or growing in some way, and maybe that's part of my thing about trying something new and never repeating experiences, maybe it comes out like that.
Yeah.
But even other than that, like, day-to-day things, I think one of the most, like, how to word this, one of the periods of my life in which I learned the most about myself and came up in multiple instances was where I would be dog sitting for one of my close friends at the time.
When did this happen? I don't remember.
It was for Allie when I was house sit for her.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I guess there's nothing real here, like bad content in which I wouldn't want to say her name. Like, I'm just saying I house sat for her. But point being, whenever I would house sit for her and watch her dog, it was just like, I kind of realized, like, damn, this is, like, what I want out of life.
You want
at least
dog sit?
Well, I mean, kind of yes, kind of no. Because, like, not from, like, a work perspective, but just, like, wake up, you know, I go out for a run with the dog, come back, maybe I go in the pool, maybe I play some video games, maybe I watch something. But, you know, then I would call someone, maybe I would even hang out with Ken or someone, like, you know, during the day, and then I'd come back for the dog at night. And then I'd go on another run with the dog, which is, like, super basic, but just, like, realizing that I had secure, like, a place of my own, realizing I had all the entertainment that I needed, realizing that I had a companion, like, to give me, like, some form of connection and also give me exercise, which would be good. And also just making sure I'm getting out of the house. It kind of made me realize, like, ideally, at least in the future, once I'm on my own, like, this is what I would want out of my weekends. It feels unattainable right now, you know, living with my parents, still in school, not having a ton of money, working a really low paying job. Like, it feels unattainable. Also, having cats that absolutely will not go on runs with me.
Yeah.
You get the idea. It just kind of made me realize, like, dang, this actually is attainable, and this is, like, peak living. Now I just got to find out the roadmap to get there.
Yeah, I am curious, which, I mean, I don't think this is anything that you could say for certain, but like, I think that that's a good overall goal, bucket list thing, whatever, because it seems a lot more achievable than, you know, some people's, like, I want to own a private jet or something. But yeah. I am curious, like, you growing up in the less than ideal situation that you did, both health-wise and financial and family-wise and all that stuff.
And look-wise, have you? So, not just kidding.
Unfortunately, I have seen you. Yeah, but with that being the case, you know, people tend to be, like, they tend to aim for things that they don't have. But let's say that you do get that, and not to say that you wouldn't be happy, but just as a thought experiment, let's say that you get that tomorrow. You know, you fall into a job that's making good enough money. Let's say that you know, that they're like, you know what, UCI comes, like, Jonathan, we fucked with you a little bit too much. Here's your bachelor's degree. And, you know, you get a house, you get a dog, you get all of this stuff that's, like, super convenient. Do you think that you could spend, like, you know, going off of the average American lifespan, let's say that you make it to your late 70s, do you think you can spend the last 55 years of your life just generally doing that and, you know, of course have the occasional, like, maybe vacation or do this? Or do you think, like, after a year or so of that stuff, you're like, yeah, I enjoyed this, but now it's become the new, like, natural to me, where it's like, shit, you know, the dog and this and that, I still enjoy it, but it's, you know, still leaving me wanting something now?
I think that's kind of getting to like a key idea here that like I'm gonna have a hard time answering, but I'm gonna do my best for you. Damn it! Like, I have you ever heard the expression, probably even just from The Dark Knight, about the idea of the dog caught the car?
I actually have never heard this.
So the idea is like, you know how dogs, in theory, chase after cars and like try to catch them, but of course they can't because cars can go much faster than a dog is physically capable of.
Yes.
Well, there's the idea that, the dog catches the car one day. What does the dog do? Like, the game's over. It's done it. There's nothing else to do.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I've always been, like, afraid of that reality because that kind of happened to me in a sense in getting to UCI. Like, don't get me wrong, I busted my ass off when I got there. You saw that.
Mm-hmm.
But the fire and stuff was gone. Like, a lot of my motivation growing up was just people always like thinking I was stupid and doubting me. Like teachers in middle school like openly criticizing me in front of my peers for like me not trying and having shitty attendance and everything, and yet me still acing the end of year tests so I'd make it to the next class anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And like high school, me basically being a dropout, although not legally. But point being, there was a huge fire to me to make it to a better school than every single person who doubted me. And so once I actually did that, it was like, great, I made it.
Mm-hmm.
Now what? Like, obviously the thing is graduate, and obviously I busted my ass off and got so little sleep and worked so fucking harder than anything I did in my life. So like, it's not like I gave up by any means, but it's just like that fire inside me was gone, and it kind of just felt like monotony at that point. It didn't feel like an opportunity. It felt like this is a fate that was thrusted upon me, even though it's exactly what I asked for.
Yeah, it is interesting. I'm curious if you've seen any of the Dr. K videos where he's talked about this, because from what I've heard from him, which I would trust, but also I haven't researched much beyond it, is that Buddha, like historically anyway, whether you believe in the beliefs that go with Buddhism, was like a prince or something like that, and was basically just raised in a life where it's like, oh, you don't have to worry about like, man, when I have this much money, when I get a girlfriend like this, when I this, where he was basically handed everything on a silver platter and was just like, man, life's still like, I still don't feel complete, I don't feel this, but I have everything that anyone could want. And that's kind of when he went down the route of like, then, this must not be what brings happiness, let's give it all up, and then, meditate all day and blah, blah, blah. But it is just interesting from that standpoint of, it definitely does seem like it's a game of just, pursuing things. That's the whole thing about the pursuit of happiness, because let's say that you get the thing that you think will make you happy. It may do that for a bit of time, but if you get, whatever that is, it probably won't last that way to keep you happy for years and years and years. It's going to be very limited, and then your mind's going to jump to the next thing.
Yeah, you know what? Let me look up a quote from something really. There we go. That's the character's name. I'm kind of tying this to something that I've kind of thought of. Like, again, it's a fear that I've had, and it's kind of tying into all this. Like, there was a scene in BoJack Horseman that I think actually really tightly goes with what you're saying about Buddha, which is the reason I looked it up.
Mm-hmm.
There's a character in it called Cuddly Whiskers who was super rich, top of Hollywood, getting like award after award, but it wasn't until he gave up everything, much like Buddha, that he became happy. And you might be like, why are you bringing up the exact same thing that I just said, Jonathan? Which would be a valid question. But the reason I'm saying that is because, at least in context of the show, you see the guy say that and everything, but then the camera kind of pans out, and you see that he's doing this in front of some large private estate where he has a massive mansion and everything, and it comes off as super hypocritical and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just kind of funny because I'm not too sure how well people are willing to actually really go down that same kind of path in this modern day and age, including myself for that matter, because like in the society we were brought up in, because we live in a society,
yeah,
our entire thing is based around earning and making and attaining and achieving. So I am not sure it's that easy to get that hard wiring out.
Yeah, well, also, I mean, I think that it's kind of difficult inherently, and something that I've brought up to my girlfriend because she's Buddhist, that is kind of like the hypocritical nature of like Buddhism and meditation, which I just find confusing. Of like, shit, what do you do then? Is part of like what Buddha supposedly did and what you're supposed to do with all of that, especially the people who take it very seriously, like the monks and all that, is that you're supposed to like release all your worldly desires, your mansion, like the guy from BoJack Horseman, all of this. And even Dr. K has said, like, oh, for you to become a monk, you have to, like, get a doctorate degree because they don't let you go in there unless you have something to give up. It's easy for a homeless person to give up all of their worldly possessions because they have none. It's harder to do when you actually have them. But, the thing that I've always found kind of like hypocritical and interesting is like, oh, but if you're going into this with the desire of like, this is how I be happy, well, isn't that contradictory? Because the whole point of this is to lose all desires. So then it's like, wait, am I doing this to be happy? Because if that's the case, then I'm doing this incorrectly. So it does just make it hard of just like, oh, well, if I want to be happy, shouldn't I like just give up everything and just like meditate all day, move to India or something? But it's like, shit, if I'm doing that to be happy, then I guess I'm doing it wrong. So it's almost this like, I'm not sure if it really works this way, but it's almost like this asshole situation of like the only way to get what you want is the people who don't want that.
Yeah, that is the ultimate catch-22, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know. And then it's just so confusing to me. Like, I never can get a good grasp on this kind of thing, to be entirely honest. Mm-hmm. And no matter how much I try to. And there's other, like, things in religion I can bring up that seem contradictory. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But I guess kind of circling back, because it's another idea I had about something you asked, about the whole, like, idea of would I be happy or would I want more? Or I think another question is, like, would I be complacent? Which is another, like, that's a bad outcome right there. Mm-hmm. In theory. It's just, like... I kind of think of it like, I know you never saw, like, the ending of Breaking Bad. I don't really want to spoil that.
Well, I know what happens, because it's a very famous ending. Assuming that you're talking about, like, what happens to Walter at the end. If you're talking about, like, other things, who the big bad guy is at the end, I don't know about that. Well, it's
like the episode right before that, so, yeah, I'll stick with that.
Okay.
Like, after he goes into hiding, he kind of, like, loses all meaning in his life. He's throwing money at the guy who, like, gave him a new identity just to get the guy to hang out with him for like one more hour. Like, nothing means anything. And like, he lost all that fire and drive, which is kind of what I'm comparing to about me getting the UCI and everything. Mm-hmm. But then Walter sees an interview on TV that stirs up the fire with him and like reawakens Heisenberg and Walter White for the last time, basically. And it's just kind of like, I'm kind of feeling like, I don't know, maybe would it be the dog that caught the car, or would it be like, maybe once I get there, something else would like ignite in me? Because like, sometimes that does happen. It's really strange.
Yeah, like, I feel like, at least off of my current understanding of things and hearing all of the stuff that we've talked about, it almost seems like the ideal way to live life to, like, maximize contentment and happiness is to be the dog that catches the car, but almost like a relay race. When you catch that car, like, within a reasonable amount of time, and assuming that the car doesn't take you, 5 years to catch, that, like, you have the next car that's starting and takes you a reasonable amount of time. Because that's part of the thing, is, like, if things take too long, then it gets discouraging. But if things go too quickly, then it's also like, well, the value behind it is so low. Where I feel like, the almost ideal way to have my life go, which once again, if this happened, maybe I'd feel differently about it, is to have, like, a car that takes 6 months to chase and have, like, 50 of those lined up for the rest of my life.
It's just hard getting 50 lined up, like, once you catch it. Like, it's not necessarily like you pour your life into it, but for a lot of people, catching that does become their identity.
Yeah.
So it's just, I'm not saying you have to form a new identity or anything. I'm just saying, like, how do you find the next thing that you want?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, it is hard. I mean, it's something that, like, I wouldn't be surprised if you've heard Dr. K say this, because I know he's said it enough times different things, but he's had, like, clients when he's been doing his therapy stuff who are, like, Wall Street banker type people who make, like, multi-millions or even billions of dollars, and a lot of them are depressed because it's like, oh, my goal was to make $1 million, and then it became $5 million, and then $10 million, and before you know it, I had $100 million, and I was still like, shit, I have more money than I know what to do with it. I'm still not happy. Like, what the fuck do I do with my life?
Yeah, And I don't know what the answer to that is. The way I've kind of approached it is, I mean, I mentioned it, but like just literally trying as many new things as possible. Because I feel like for them, they're trying the exact same thing. They're just going, I don't know, kind of sequentially about it, but it's more the exact same thing. And for me, I don't know, like something I did a few weeks ago was I went to Anaheim with one of my coworkers, and we ended up getting, Korean barbecue, which is a very normal thing for me at this point. But they had little squids, as in little entire whole squids, head, legs, and all, and everything inside it. And I didn't want to try it because it looked fucking disgusting. But my coworker wanted to, so I indeed had one with him. Honestly, wasn't that bad, and that is one of the most memorable things from that night. Not because like not because it was like rocked my world and it was the best food ever, but just like, I don't know, it was something new that I wouldn't have thought of before. It gave me a memory, it gave me a story. And I've even talked to you before how sometimes I live life in a way doing things I don't want because I know it'll give me a story by the end of it. Like, I don't know, that's just the way I've approached it. How have you approached finding the next big thing? Because you have graduated school, you do have a job now, you have a girlfriend. Like, I don't know, I'm sure that this is kind of the life that you a couple years ago would have wanted. So
yeah,
how do you deal with it?
I don't know. It is just kind of like introspection in the moment. I mean, even when I was here, it took me a couple months before I decided, like, whether I got to find a job. I tried YouTube, doing my own stuff for a bit, and I was like, this. And it really is just, like, trying to find, the next car to chase, quote unquote, of, like, okay, right now it's, okay, have enough money to save up so I can do this, and kind of reach those goals, like being able to have my, manga, Gundam display room and stuff like that. But part of it is also just, I don't know, still trying to figure out, because I know if I get that, I think it will be really cool, and I think I'll enjoy it and all that, but I also know that won't keep me happy long term, and right now, I am just trying to figure out of, like, shit, what is the, like, thing that I should do right now to keep me happy for an extended period of time. And like something that I find interesting with you, and you can correct me on this, but I almost feel like this is the way to go, which you're kind of doing, but it also might be a double-edged sword, is it feels like you have no cars that you're chasing. It feels like you're just chasing bikes, where it's not hard for you as a dog to catch up, which also means that there's not a lot of investment and it may not have huge value, but also you're constantly reaching it and you can jump onto the next bike super quick, where it seems like that just keeps your life more just content from day to day. Not to say that you don't have your cars that you're chasing, like college and shit like that, but it seems like you just have a lot more of these basic things throughout your day to day that makes life just, I don't know, generally more enjoyable.
I think that's fair to say. Like, I have the one overarching car, as you mentioned, but it's just like, I don't know, that's the thing in the long run. Like, there's not too much I could do about it in the day to day other than my responsibilities and what I need to do. Like, I do my homework and then nothing else you can do, or I go to my job and then you clock out. So it's just like, I don't know, I guess you could argue I could make more, like start planning trips, start investing in making YouTube stuff or whatever, like just etc. thing. But it's just like, I don't know, that's kind of big and daunting, like to have so many big things at once.
Yeah.
So I kind of just try to pursue smaller things in the meantime, and it makes me feel better.
Yeah, I mean, if that works, I definitely think that's a good thing to go for. Something that I am curious, like coming up, we're just passing the hour mark here, so something to kind of like bring this to a close with the conversation and the topic is, I am curious, even if it's something that we've already mentioned, I'm fine with just doubling down on it, but if you were to die today, like, what are the things that you would regret of not having done yet? Like, are you, if you died today, you're like, well, obviously I wish I could have lived longer, but honestly I lived my life with no regrets, blah blah blah? Or are there any, like, even milestones of life of like, shit, I never got to live to that point in my life where I was, running with my dog every morning and blah blah blah?
Let me think for a minute. Big, long, like, not in a long-term thing, but just something I would actually genuinely regret.
Yeah, like, for me, for example, I think that, like, even though I listed all of the different things, I think the things that make the biggest difference to me right now is, one, I'm not, in the healthiest shape right now. Not to say that I need to be absolutely amazing, but I want to be healthy again just from, like, a physiological standpoint and a mental standpoint, which is one thing. And beyond that, it really does just come down to I want to be able to like not worry about money and have like friends that I can hang out often, like it was during high school or something. And those are two goals that are like the money thing just takes a shit ton of time unless you're lucky, and the friends thing is hard to do with people move in different places. You and I obviously still talk often enough, but at this point it's been more than 2 years since we've seen each other, and to have like you said you're like kind of goal or nice situation would be like, oh, running with your dog in the morning and then like hanging out with Ken. It's like, shit, if Ken gets married and moves to Siberia or wherever the goal was for him before, like, it's hard to do that stuff, and it's hard to make friends that like at least quickly that you value as much as like me or your holy trinity of friends that you have and all that good shit.
Yeah, at least the one thing I will say is I don't know, I have had astounding luck and an ability to meet people. Like, thankfully that has been very easy for me. I know it's been a bit harder for you. And I'll get into something that's easier for you than me after, but thankfully that hasn't been too big of an issue. So as sad as I am that already one of my already two of my best friends have moved to the other side of the country, and I barely ever see either of you.
Who's the other one? Is it
that would be Valerie.
Okay.
Yeah. So like that happened, and then presumably Ken's gonna be marrying and moving pretty soon, I think.
Where is the plan to move? Is it still? Was I right on Siberia, or did I say the wrong cold country?
That's long term, but I think in the more immediate future, just elsewhere in California.
Okay.
And then of course, Cecilia should be gone within the year when she's going to university for her master's or doctorates, whatever it is. So she's like, in probably less than 2 years, there would be no one left in California, and I'm not too worried, to be entirely honest.
Yeah. Because I mean, that's good, I guess.
I mean, it already happened with two people, and like those relationships are still in my mind a-okay. Like I don't have any problem with either. Like, yeah, it would suck, but it's just like already we've shown with my new coworkers, I go out with them at least once a week, and and forming pretty good relationships with them. They're by no means like my closest friends, but it's very fulfilling and helps my day to day. So I'm not
I actually am curious about that real quick, because that's something that I've noticed that you've had like better, for like better words, luck with than me. But also, I can't believe that it's just luck, because it's one of those things where like the stereotype of if all of your relationships end with shitty this, it's like maybe they're not the problem if 20 relationships ended this way, because the common thread is you. So with that being the case, like I've had different people, like some people I've gotten along with, some people there's been times in college where I haven't really found too many people, and I'm sure some of that can be luck, but you've consistently at UCI, at your current job and all that stuff, and like, do you tell these people, hey, let's hang out? Are you just lucky enough that you're finding people that they're like, oh, let's go eat here after work or whatever? Because even at the job that I'm at right now, I'm really lucky because it's at a place that's completely like surrounded by nerd culture. So I've talked to people where I've like brought up a YouTuber with 100,000 subscribers, and he's been like, hey, are you talking about this guy? I'm like, holy shit, you know this guy? Like, what are the chances of this? Or talking about like, oh, this guy plays TFT and I play TFT, or this and that, and there's just enough people that I've gotten along with. But in elementary school even, I remember, which part of this could just be my personality changing, that I would in second grade, I remember one of my best friends, I became that way because I was just like, hey, let's be friends. Do you want to come over to my house this weekend? But now I feel like if there's a guy that I'm getting along with, unless there's something very specific of like, oh, he likes One Piece, I'm into anime, and I've been trying to get through One Piece as well. If there's a movie like that, I can be like, hey, you want to see that together? But without that, it's just being like, hey, we have generally had good conversations at work. Would you like to hang out this weekend and do I don't know what, because there's nothing specific in mind? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. But you've had enough luck that you've just like hung out and chilled with people, and I don't know. I'm curious. Master, teach me.
Well, I think there's really two things that have made it work for me. One is I am legitimately just lucky in that I have not made a single friendship since, I would have to think about community college, but at least since university, where I've been the one to make the move. Like, it has literally every single friendship, and then been the other person inviting me out, and then we vibe from there. So in that regard, yes, I am just incredibly lucky in all honesty, because you know me, I don't ever initiate contact, so I am really lucky in that regard.
Yeah, that was
But
one of the things that I was surprised about, because you're Mr. Like, even if I get really along well with someone, like, or even using me as an example, if I don't call you prior to the podcast stuff, within like a month, you might give me a call. But otherwise, like, you'll call with me weekly if I call you weekly, but otherwise, you're not the person who reaches out normally.
it's just that I genuinely don't need that much social contact, and I'm already getting it from like other people, so it's just like it kind of just genuinely flies by my radar without me noticing, or I do notice and it just doesn't bother me enough. But it's, that's the less kind answer. But the other way of looking at it is, how to word it. It's just, I think the thing that works enough is that I have two main aspects going on with me and friends. The one with me is that, as we've discussed, I'm really a jack of all trades kind of guy, but master of none. So, like, if it's someone who plays video games, I kind of play video games. I can hang out with them and play whatever. If it's someone who likes sports, I do kind of watch sports, so I can genuinely go out and watch them. Someone who likes music, like, I do kind of listen to a lot of different music. I can genuinely vibe with them. Someone who does so many things, like, there's very, very rarely someone I've met who I don't have something in common with that we can build from. And the other key thing is, so many of my friendships, I actually have, this is kind of going to be kind of contradictory to what I just said, but even if I have something in common with them, I don't have very much in common with them, like, at all. Like, I don't know, looking at Cecilia, for example, one of my closest friends, we have basically no interest in common outside of like educational things, and yet we still hang out multiple times a week, talk almost every day, like not any sort of issue. My coworker, who I've been hanging out with a lot, I mean, we both watch sports, kind of, like I watch football, I don't really watch any of the other ones, and that's kind of all we largely have in common, but that's fine, we still vibe otherwise. I think it's just, I need to find someone who is open and spontaneous enough to just doing whatever, because that's kind of all I'm good at. But thankfully, being good at that is a fantastic trait, because I can have fun doing anything. Like, people like invite me out to things I don't like doing, and they think I'm having a miserable time, but truthfully, I'm having fun just doing something.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I just gotta find out, whether it's the wrong people, or whether I gotta, lose 90 pounds and be borderline anorexic like you. If that makes people want to, invite you to stuff, because I feel like you and I are fairly similar in the fact that we're fine with doing anything. I mean, the perfect example is you would come to my house and we'd be like, do you want to play 1979 Trivial Pursuit where we don't know any of the answers and we're going to be playing it for 5 hours? It's like, sure. Do you want to play Scrabble for 4 hours? Do you want to play Connect 4 for 8 hours? Do you want to, like, we would just do the most random shit, and it's like, oh, I just have a fun time hanging out. It doesn't need to be anything specific. But, you and I already had enough of an established friendship, and I felt like my personality at the time was something where I don't know, it was just more natural for me to invite people to do stuff like that. But now, considering that I don't have a solid friend pool, at least, close by, I still have people like you or Matthew that I talk to online, but since no one invites me to, like, hey, do you just want to do something random, I find it really hard or awkward to just be like, hey, guy, we come to talk, do you want to play Scrabble? And it's like, why? We've never talked about Scrabble before. I don't know. It sounds fun. It's something to do to kill time. Like, I don't know. But, it's interesting.
I wish I could give better advice, but really it's just, I don't know. Like, I've kind of, like, just, hopefully it doesn't come off as, like, a brag, but I've kind of just, like, socially chameleoned with anybody. Like, I've had a wide group of friends. In high school, I hung out with football players, but I also hung out with you guys who were more into, like, geek culture. And at MSJC, I would be both in the honors and, like, president and hang out with those people. And then I'd also hang out with people who, like, smoked weed and drank on campus. Like, it's just, like, I don't know. It's not that I get along with everybody per se. Like, I think that's overly simplifying it. I think it's just, like, I find what works and adapt with it, and then thankfully they find that adaptation convincing enough that they keep inviting me. Oh. Like, not to say that you can't, because I actually do assume you are actually very good at doing the exact same thing. It's just, I don't know, it's never been an issue for me. I don't know why.
I don't know. I mean, I'm just going to boil it down to something which is probably not, which is I forgot if I told you, but when I was cutting my own hair like a month ago, I made a mistake and I forgot that I took off the attachment when I was shaving the back, so I just like shaved the back of my head and I was like, fuck, I either got to live with this for the next few months or I just got to shave my entire head. So I went with that option, and with me being like, a bulkier 5'9", resting bitch face white guy with a shaved head, I don't think too many people want like presumable neo-Nazis hanging out with them, so I'm just gonna blame everything on that.
Well, you just got to wear the hat or beanie, and then you instantly become like social media influencer status, so you're good.
Well, what if it's a MAGA hat?
You would fit in with some circles. I don't doubt that.
I guess that is true.
like you never said anything about the quality of company. You just you're just saying getting people, so we're good.
That's true. Couldn't you imagine me like storming the Capitol and being like, "Hey, any of you play the new Digimon survival game?" Like, no, we haven't.
Oh, yeah. Oh man, I actually did have another like significant topic on this that I'm gonna force you to go through with me because I think it's really applicable.
Okay.
But we're going on a totally tangent first.
Yes.
That Digimon visual novel game. So you've actually started it, yeah?
I have started it.
How you like it? Because I know it's mostly VN, but
yeah, it is. I enjoy it. It's good overall. I really enjoyed the soundtrack for it. I haven't gotten too far in it. I want to say I've gotten like 5 hours into it, and I'll say that like an hour and a half of that was grinding, almost like Pokemon, where it's like, oh, there's a 1% chance of this thing coming up here, and I'm not sure if I'll be able to catch it again later. And then lo and behold, when I get to the next section, it's like one of the most common things, and I fucking hate myself for wasting that much time on it. But yeah, it's good. I enjoy it. From what I've heard, I mean, I'm trying not to get too dark into spoilers and all that stuff, but I think that most of the main characters actually can die in this. So I think it's supposed to be more like an adult dark thing, but it's enjoyable so far. I'm definitely enjoying it.
I mean, that's good. Knowing that there's some kind of stake to it, and especially in a visual novel, like just knowing your choices matter, like that would be great. But also like that, yeah, I'm glad to hear you're liking it, especially given that it was a more VN. I know you've like kind of played VN-esque stuff before, at least Katawa Shoujo. I don't know about much else, but at least I know you've been exposed to it before, even if you've never been a big fan, so it's good to hear that at least you like this.
Yeah, for sure. It's enjoyable. The RPG helps break up the visual novel stuff for me, who's not like a huge visual novel fan. The RPG isn't the deepest or most entertaining, but it's got enough to it where it does keep it fresh. Yeah, I mean, when I finish it, like I said before, I'll give you my Steam login, and hopefully you can at least play it for a little bit, and if you don't like it, feel free to stop, but I'll want to see your opinions on it, you being the visual novel guy.
Yeah, for sure. But how do you feel about like reading VNs again versus it could have just been like a web novel or webtoon, granted without gameplay aspect, but still.
I mean, for this being Digimon, I'm glad that it is what it is, because it makes you feel more like, personable with the character, since you have your dialogue options and all that stuff. But when it generally comes to series, if I have the option of like, would I rather have a visual novel or a web novel where I can just read it, I'd rather just have the web novel.
Fair, but at least it's satisfactory for what this given thing is.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. But kind of wrapping around to the thing I was going to bring up, because we've been talking about one thing that I'm good at that you've had a bit of struggle with. Mm-hmm. Now I'm flipping it the other way and kind of tying it back into bucket lists, massively.
You want to be able to weigh more than 110 pounds, and I am great at binge eating.
Well, that would be a pretty good goal, but again, I'm not going to do anything to work on that.
Yeah.
But, the one thing I was thinking about, like, you mentioned the one thing I would regret if I died.
Yeah.
And, I mean that's not really how you worded it.
No, but,
The idea behind it, one, I would regret that I died, but beyond that, I did come up with one actual substantial, like, serious answer that is kind of depressing in a way, but I'm going to go with it because it's something you have experience in. I'm not going to ask for advice, but it is kind of something we're juxtaposing in. Ooh. Is, as you know, I've dedicated much of my life to school, working, social life, taking care of family stuff, and trying to maintain hobbies. Mm-hmm. And there's only so many hours in a day, so some things have to take sacrifices, right?
Yes.
And the one thing that I made a conscious decision, in part on my end, but also, supply chain issues, is relationships. I just pretty much decided I just do not have time for. And even with girls who I have been talking to, I've just straight up said, like, I'm going to prioritize friendships over relationships because that's just who I am. And where I've gotten some of the most enjoyment out of my life, as you know, are my friendships. But because of that, I would genuinely regret knowing if I died, like, at the end of the day, wow, I never did end up making it to the point where I had enough time to really seriously pursue a relationship because I was always focused on school and work and etc.
I guess
so, like,
that you and I both have the luck aspect that goes with that stuff, now that I think about it, with relations, whether it be romantic or whether it be friend stuff. Because for me, I'm not someone who's actively pursued this stuff too much. Like, maybe right when I got out of high school, having never had a relationship, I was, like, looking for something. But after a certain point, it was just like, okay, whatever. And it just kind of fell that way with the current relationship and even stuff before. And it just kind of like with your friendships, of like, of course, be open to stuff, but beyond that, it really is just like, I guess I've had better luck with the pieces falling where they have with that stuff, and you've had better luck with the friendships falling where they have.
Yeah, and I mean, I know you haven't exactly had, like, tons of relationships, but the ones you have had, I mean, this one's going strong, and I don't know the exact start date, but I think it's been at least half a year, and then your one with your previous girlfriend was, what, like a year or two, so, like, I don't know, you're doing pretty good in that aspect.
Yeah, what's your record? Like, a week and a half?
Depends. Are we talking about overall length of relationship or of it going well?
I'll let you decide. Whatever makes your ego feel better.
Going well was 5 days.
Wow, I just drank water and I almost spit that out right now.
I have not had one successfully make it to day 6 without there being some kind of major issue in one way or another, which is pretty great.
Wow, if that ever happens, I'll make sure to throw a party for you.
Yeah, honestly, please do. At that point, if I make it 1 week, oh my god, she's a keeper.
Yeah.
I'll just decide, granted, part of that is just because I have admittedly chosen to pursue people who may not have been in the best place for a relationship at that point, and that is on me. Granted, a lot of it's on them for kind of being not stable, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Point being, it just has not been in my favor, but it has been in yours. So at least, bucket list wise, that might be one thing. But again, there's only so much work I could put towards it. Like I said, supply chain issues. It's a two-way street.
Yeah. Supply chain issues make it sound a little bit weird, but yeah. For sure. I mean, there's a lot more that I can delve into that stuff that comes to mind, but also we're at an hour and 20 right now, and I don't want to take a 2-hour podcast here, especially when I can just use this information for another topic later on.
Okay, fine. We'll make the dating episode one day, but we're not doing it next week because that is my week.
Oh, well, I mean, if you make it that, so, yeah.
All right, well, we will leave that be.
All right. Well, unless you have any amazing final realizations of your bucket list, that you want to become the world's best foot model or something, then I think we're good to finish it.
You just gave me another. Not just kidding.
God.
Well, I'd like to mix that and the funnel cake one if I could.
Oh my God, the world's best funnel foot.
All right, well, we're gonna end it there.
All right. Well, talk to you later. I'm sorry for anyone who had to listen to what was just said. And
after that, we'll see no one next week.
Exactly. Ta-ta for now.
Toot toot for new.